Hello, welcome everyone. This will be a vintage video, which it's actually been a while since I've done a vintage video, but I highly enjoy the format. I play it almost every week, and this is one of the decks that I keep coming back to. I think this is just more or less always a good choice, but it depends a lot on, your experience, your capacity, and stuff like that. It's a very demanding deck, and even after this weekend where I played it in two challenges, or three challenges rather, I was just so tired. I slept 12 hours from yesterday to today. Like, this is a very demanding deck. So this deck is a vintage Doomsday, and today's video is going to be a run through of my top 4 run this weekend. I also top 8'd the next day. That might be a second video. Let's see about that. But we're going to be going through my top 4 run. Let's start off with a deck tech before we get to some games that I picked out. So Doomsday is a combo deck that tries to resolve Doomsday and finish the game with a Thassa's Oracle trigger. So more or less all the cards in this deck are here to either find or protect Doomsday. So that means we take advantage of Ponder getting unrestricted. We have those on top of Preordain, so a lot of cantrip power. Even the Probe, we have the Walk, we have Demonic Tutor, we have Consultation, Mystical Tutor, and Ancestral Recall Brainstorm. So lots of digging power in this deck, even Gush. And the thing about this deck is that the vast majority of the time, once you kind of resolve Doomsday, you're gonna win the game. So the biggest part about this deck where you kind of level up from, just winning when your cards are better than the opponents, like, look at me, I have Turn on Doomsday and I Force of Will, like, you'll win those games. We have to worry about the games that we were not, quote-unquote, supposed to win, and how we can kind of push percentages, play around opposing top decks, etc. And all of that stuff requires vast format knowledge. So I hope we get to see some situations where I build my Doomsday piles with a bunch of different stuff in mind. You have to weigh back and forth. You kind of want to hedge your bets. You most likely can't play around everything, but you kind of have to estimate what's the most likely counterplay your opponent's going to have post-Doomsday, right? Like normal, since we have Black Lotus in the deck, it's kind of easy to just, Ancestral Recall or Gush into Lotus Oracle and win the game, but sometimes we have to get to 0 cards in the library. How do we do that? Sometimes we have to worry about the opponent drawing Wasteland, or having Collector Roof, or having Lavinia, or having Phyrexian Revoker, or drawing Null Rod, or Ragavan for that matter, or Ancestral Recall targeting us when we have an almost empty library. All of this we have to think about. So we have to find a path to resolve the Doomsday, and then we have to find a path to hopefully get to shore safely, to use a metaphor. We also have a bunch of protection in the deck. We have Flusters and Force of Will, which are kind of the standard stuff. Force of Will, very standard. Flusterstorm is the best in counter wars, also against opposing Flusters. This card will come up short versus something like, let's say, Spell Pierce or something, whatever, against stuff like Null Rod or a Jewel player trying to go off, or what do I know. But in general, that card will protect our combo the best. Then I have a single copy of Daze. Daze is especially potent against Bizarre decks. Also, if you manage to Daze someone game 1, its impact on the games 2 and 3 cannot be understated, while I may even sideboard it out in that case. So Daze has a lot of value, but it's especially good against Bizarre decks because they simply have 0 mana. So it's just like 1 mana counter. Then we have a Mental Misstep. It's going to be good. Counter opponent's Misstep. Counter their, what do I know, Soul Ring, Mana Vault. Counter their Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce sees a lot of play these days, so it's like a free counter in some situations. And yeah, aside from that, for Street Wraiths, we want to fuel our Delve cards. We want to cycle into the win right away after casting Doomsday. Street Wraith does a lot of things, but we have to worry about it a little bit in a format with Orcish Bowmasters. So last thing I want to talk about before going to the sideboard is this card, Demonic Consultation. So the main use for this card, I would say, is comboing with Thassa's Oracle. It is a way to empty my deck. I can name whatever card. If you want to troll a little bit, you can name a funny card. I usually just name one of the top ones on the list. This card wins the game with Thassa's Oracle. Sometimes there's a little bit of concern, like, do I consult first or do I Oracle first? Depends on a lot of things. Let's say you're playing against Spell Pierce and you have 3 or 4 lands in play, you want to cast Consultation first. Then your opponent kind of has to play the Spell Pierce up front. You can do it the other way around. If the opponent's on Pyroblast, then you play Thassa's Oracle first. With the trigger on the stack, then you Consultation. There's a bunch of corner cases when it comes to that. The sideboard, I mainly try and address Dredge as a deck. Tabernacle can help a little bit against that deck, especially with Vampiric Tutor to kind of have 2 copies of that effect. But I actually cut it after playing this tournament, the Tabernacle. It doesn't have that much utility in this metagame, I think. Then I have 3 removal spells for mainly mono white and Collector Oofs and Lavinia. I play 2 cutdowns because that card has an easier time killing off Archon of Emeria out of mono white, where Fatal Push needs Revolt, and that can be awkward with fetch lands entering tapped, etc., etc. Fatal Push is more flexible. You can actually kill like a Dungeoneer. You can kill Lodestone Golem. You can kill some other stuff. Leovold, some niche cards that cutdown can't kill. Then there's a single copy of Duress, basically coming in against all blue decks. It's historically it's a card I added when Underworld Breach saw heavy play because I needed like a way to snag Brain Freeze out of my opponent's hand. These days it just comes in against all combo decks and all blue decks, so I like it for now. Maybe it can be upgraded later. A couple of traps and negation for faster, or just fast combo in general. Negation is also good against shops, good against Oath, Jewel, stuff like that. And then a couple of Steel Sabotages against workshop decks, whether it's of the prison kind or combo-y kind. That card is gonna be great. You can handle stuff on the stack. You can also bounce an Colorado Trinisphere later and win on the spot. Both will come up if you play this deck a fair amount. Okay, I think that'll do it just for the deck tech. Let's get into some games and see how we got to that sweet, sweet top 4. All right, welcome to round 1. This is game 2. I'm playing against a weird Oath of Druids Beseech the Mirror Storm hybrid. And as you can see, I boarded out Daze, I boarded out Mystical Tutor. Usually I want to do that against opposing blue decks. I cut a Street Wraith. It looks like I've removed Money Consultation. And I have added the blue counterspells and the Duress. So yeah, it's a matchup where you don't really know whether you're control or combo, but I'm actually leaning towards being control with the way I sideboard. When you cut a card like Street Wraith or Daze, usually you're looking to be more of the receiving end, I would say. So that's like my logic here. So looking at this opener, it's just decent. We have a couple of cyclers. We have some cantrips. We have a Mindbreak Trap if the opponent goes nuts turn 1. So yeah, pretty easy keep against an opposing combo deck. So yeah, this is what I want to see. Like, if my opponent just goes Orchard Mox, all of a sudden I'm scared they can just go Oath of Druids and I can't do anything. But once this pedal hits, I'm pretty happy with my Mindbreak Trap, let me put it that way. So let's see what the opponent does here. Okay. Floating black, casting Dark Ritual. So yeah, this is either, gonna end very good for me or very poorly. So if I remember correctly, I let my opponent Beseech the Mirror here. So they bargain Beseech the Mirror, get rid of Emerald, and in my mind it's like, what's the worst thing that can happen? That's if they get some kind of storm card, like right off the bat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just say they make 10 goblins here with Into the Warrens. Like, that card is not, in my opinion, vintage playable, but that is not too important. If the opponent decides it's vintage playable, it might just kill me this game. So it's the risk of my opponent thinking that that card is good versus, oh no, what am I talking about? I can just counter all the copies. All right. So I just talked myself into there's zero downside to letting this Beseech the Mirror resolve. So let's, unless there's something, no, there's zero downside. Okay, fair enough. Let's say this was a Force of Will. Then my previous rant would be true. But because it's a Mindbreak Trap, it's not really super relevant. All right. Let's see what my opponent goes for here. The upside is they get something. Exactly. The upside here is my opponent gets Tinker and also invest the pedal. So now I basically put my opponent on having Force Blue card or more or less lose the game on the spot. That's how I felt like anyway. So I Mindbreak Trap there. If my opponent has a Force, I'll start Desperation cycling Street Wraith. That was a cool one. I almost lost track in the first hand here. All right, so my opponent's down to 3 cards. We have 6 cards and a Spirit token. And obviously, the opponent did not have, like, Underground Sea or whatever as a starting mana source. So I'm looking pretty good here. I cycle a couple of Street Wraiths, and I have a Flusterstorm here. So I basically, in this spot, I basically have to say, okay, is Flusterstorm going to do anything on my opponent's next turn? With Tinker gone, the opponent already depleted all those resources. In my mind at the time, I thought the only realistic play from the opponent was like land or Mox, play Oath of Druids, and that cannot be flustered anyway. So I decided to get things going with my Preordain here. And I think I keep another Preordain with the intention of going cantrip, hold up Fluster on the following turn. My opponent now sees what's up, and they cast a Brainstorm. Pretty desperate Brainstorm here, and if I remember correctly, my opponent passes the turn here. Yeah, this is not good for the opponent for multiple reasons. They lost a bunch of resources, and I actually have a decent clock going. In my notes, I wrote I played Dimir Delver this game, so this is kind of how you should look at it. I can cantrip a bunch because I found a Sapphire. Then I can pass holding up Fluster and Negation Pitch. And now, I mean, I'm not in a hurry at all. I let my opponent resolve this Ponder. In retrospect, there is a case that I just fluster that Ponder, make my opponent draw another bad card. So this fluster is like a Time Walk. I don't think that would have been insane to do. This is obviously a great spot as well. So I draw another Ponder. Here's Duress with Mindbreak Trap underneath. So I duress my opponent here, and I see a hand of Dark Ritual, Sadistic Sacrament, and Demonic Tutor. So let's read this card. I believe it's like Triple Extract. Yeah, let's see. Search target player's library for up to 3 cards, exile them. Yeah, so this card, my opponent is basically taking a page out of, let's say, Vintage from 12 years ago, where this was like a way to just exile your opponent's Tendrils of Agony and maybe like back then, maybe even Darksteel Colossus before the opponent got to play in a combo mirror. All you need to do is like resolve this triple black card and you win the game. So obviously, with me having the spirit tokens in play, that's kind of too late for that. I think what I end up taking here is Demonic Tutor, which leaves my opponent with like only this Ritual Sacrament play, which isn't exciting as long as I have Delver going. Yeah, I take the Demonic Tutor. This point, I have still double counter magic. I hold up here. I believe I have a Mindbreak Trap as the next card. I can actually hardcast that with the help of Dark Ritual. My opponent plays out Mark Sapphire, and I'm more or less cruising at this point. But this is actually like this game didn't feature any like super hard decisions, but actually how conservatively you play with your cantrips, just shifting into the control role. I think that's very important because there is a world where the game is more contested and you start looking for combo pieces, and then all of a sudden you don't have like enough defense to, like, let's say my opponent just drew better, but I mean they obviously drew poorly here and nothing matters. My opponent goes Ritual Sacrament, gets rid of 2 oracles, and I mean, I don't care at this point. I have hard counters for days and a good clock in play. So yeah, this was a pretty nice start to the tournament. You can always lose to fast decks like that, but at least I hedged a little bit for it. The bad thing about my opponent's deck is basically that the format already requires you to, not lose fast. So decks have more than 4 forces. Decks run some traps, stuff like that. So this is like a cool take on, storming off, but you don't really gain any versatility because the metagame is kind of ready for that type of deck, with especially Coveted Jewel being such a popular deck. So yeah, I think this is the concession from the opponent, and we move on here. So let's see what happens round 2. All right, round 2. This is game 3. I'm on the play, and I'm playing against Sultai Lurrus, I believe. So Collector Roof, Deathrite Shaman, bunch of forces, stuff like that, right? And what do we think about this hand? So I'm going to keep this hand, and the question is, do I go... let's see here. Yeah, I think I only have one play here. I'll cycle for Street Wraith, see if I can find a land. If I can, great. I'll start cantripping off the land. If I don't, I mean, we have to crack the Lotus and hope for the best. Also, sideboarding-wise, I have my pitch counters that don't protect Necro. Well, yeah, and Doomsday on my own turn on the sideboard. have the top deck tutor in the sideboard. I trimmed a Street Wraith and Consultation. I brought in some removal and a Duress. Yeah, that's the case. So let's see. Black Lotus getting negated here. I cycle in response because let's say I hit a land here. Then I don't have to worry about, this getting countered. I can just play on with my Ponders. I draw Doomsday, though. So definitely want to force back here. That works. So now what? So what I decided to do here is cast Ponder with the hope of finding a land. If I do find a land, I can Ritual Doomsday, right? And I have a land in play and can kind of win from there, hopefully. So I do find a land here. I expect my opponent to have no resistance here, so this just resolves. Have to get Underground Sea. I don't play Swamp. I Doomsday, and now I have a decision to make. I think what I end up doing is going for the dreaded triple land pile. Let's see here. So the reason why I end up going for this pile is if I have a fetch land on top, that land will... Then I will have 4 cards in the deck, right? The next time I draw. The next time I draw, so I go land pass. I have 3 cards in the deck. I can fetch down to 2 cards in the deck, play Thassa's Oracle. So this way, I'm presenting a lethal Oracle. I don't expect my opponent to have any removal, and my pile can also beat a single Wasteland. While then I still have like Island, Underground Sea as actual mana sources, and then I have double Oracle, hopefully to go for those back to back. So this pile, I could have gone for like Ancestral Recall, but instead I go for the lands pile. That's better against Wasteland. My opponent just showed that they didn't have any more forces, then they would have fought over the Oracle, I feel like. So I'm left with just the Fatal Push and an Underground Sea in play, but I stack my deck and I have double lethal Oracle down there. So let's see what the opponent can do. Okay. Oh, I misremembered. Oh, it's not Sultai. Well, maybe it is. Okay, I actually can't remember my opponent's color combination. Maybe it's Lavinia or Bowmasters. Ah, that's my bad. So I draw the Scalding Tarn and pass the turn here. Not much to say. We passed the turn. We knew about that. My opponent cycles Lauren revealed. Gets an Underground Sea. Also, yeah. So the fact that my opponent plays Bowmasters is also important for like building this pile, right? Because Bowmasters is a non-factor here. So my opponent now needs a Force of Will. And if my opponent Force of Wills, I'll be at 7. Their construct isn't big enough to kill me here, so I will have another shot at it, even if my first Oracle gets forced. So fetch Thassa's Oracle. So worth noting here is my deck is now randomized because I shuffled. So now my deck is 1 Island and 1 Thassa's Oracle. So let's say this get dealt with, and it does. Now I have a 50-50 chance to draw another Oracle, which is pretty scary. My opponent has a 4/4, attacks me to 3, so, I mean, now I can't even survive with Fatal Push. I draw the Thassa's Oracle like a champ, my opponent floats triple black, and this is the time I know that I've won the game, because my opponent basically shows me that, yeah, you did a good choice, playing around Bowmasters rather than playing around other stuff here. So this did work out, but in the end it was a 50-50. I mean, I forced a situation where my opponent needed a Force of Will and basically win a 50-50 flip. And I figured that was better than any alternative at that point. But yeah, it's always a judgment call. It worked out that time, and we're off to a 2-0 start. Okay, this is round 3, game 3. I'm playing against Jewel Shops. So as you see here, I've boarded out Mystical Tutor and some Street Wraiths, Consultation, even Necro, and I've added a bunch of interaction, like, yeah, the Negation, the Mindbreak Traps, the Duress. So I'm willing to be the control leg once again. Double Mindbreak Trap here, we can't keep. Zero lands. We mulligan into Ancestral Recall, that's always a good start. So pretty easy, put a land to the bottom. I put underground seeds at the bottom because life total doesn't matter, but building cards in the yard might matter for Delve. Shuffle effects are good with Ponder. All of that good stuff. So what I decide to do here is Ancestral on my opponent's upkeep to better use this Force and Negation as protection. I do get forced. I force back, and I believe this Ancestral Recall resolves. Opponent pitched a Sink into Stupor. Very nice utility card for Vintage. So let's see. My opponent goes Grim Monolith, Black Lotus. I'm pretty scared at this point. This could mean... I mean, obviously they don't have Coveted Jewel. They would have played it. They wouldn't have the One Ring. They would have played it. So on the threat side of that spectrum, also Tinker's off the table. It's basically paradoxical outcome that the opponent can have here as when it comes to threats. My Ancestral Recall, in the meanwhile, wasn't anything to write home about, but, I mean, at least I'm building towards Doomsday. Let's see what we can draw off the top of our deck. See if Magic Online allows me. Ooh, very nice draw here. Steel Sabotage. So that's basically a 1-mana counter for all of the stuff that I just deduced that my opponent does not have, which is kind of funny. But still very good draw because it's good against most of what my opponent can draw. So here I fetch before Preordain, basically because, yeah, just thinning. If this was a Ponder, I would wait. The good thing about Ponder is when you have a fetch land, it's like take the best card out of the top 3, then shuffle. Like a mini impulse, pretty strong. Yeah, this is obviously some good hits. I believe I bottom the Doomsday and I keep the Brainstorm. And I slow roll the Brainstorm here because now all I want to do is stop my opponent from winning now with Steel Sabotage. And then on my turn, I can go Doomsday, Brainstorm into the kill. My opponent passes the turn once more here, and now I don't really believe the paradoxical outcome anymore. I feel like my opponent would have gone for it. Now the only thing I'm thinking about is counter spells, so an additional force, Heartcast, either Negation or Force of Will. The good thing about this is if my opponent does not have it, they lose the game. If they do have it, they lose a Black Lotus. So, you know, totally fine. And I end up drawing another Doomsday. I actually can't remember if I kept it or not as like a hedge against Force of Will. I mean, that would be a reasonable play. Also, if I do get countered here, I still pass the turn with Steel Sabotage up, and I have another go at it. So slow rolling this Brainstorm is kind of key because it lets me win on the spot, and that might, you know, throw my opponent off. Quick resolve here from Doomsday. And here it's important to build a pile where you brainstorm into, like, I tap out for the Brainstorm. So I want to brainstorm into, as you can see here, something like Black Lotus. Like, you need Black Lotus, then Ancestral Recall, and then everything will be fine. I brainstorm, the opponent concedes here, they give me the credit for, you know, building a pile that wins the game. So this game was not super eventful. I mulliganed into Ancestral Recall, forced my opponent's force, and they had, like, they were all dressed up with nowhere to go. I assume just 2 more mana sources in hand, and that's just what happens sometimes when you register, like, 35 mana sources or whatever. So this deck is very compact when it comes to, like, super low land count. This deck has, I believe, 17 mana sources, 14 lands, and 3 jewelry, which is extremely low. So once you get into these longer cantrip games, your land spell ratio or mana spell ratio, as it is in Vintage, that will just give you virtual card advantage, which is a thing that modern players have had for many years with Death Shadow variants, with Murktide, etc., etc. So it's like the Xerox theory from Vintage way back when, where okay, we can cut lands rather, we can play more cantrips, and then we have more gas into the mid and late game. Anyway, that's a long story to say this. Now we're 3-0, and let's keep it up. All right, this is round 4 against who I consider to be one of the absolute best players in the world when it comes to Vintage. Unlucky Monkey is a machine when it comes to fair blue decks. They always give me a run for my money, and I'm fairly sure I have a losing record against Unlucky Monkey. I'm really impressed with that player. I'm on the play here for game, let's see, checking notes. I'm on the play here for game 3, and the funny thing about this is, I know my opponent has Lurrus and some hit cards, but I actually I don't know much more. I've lost to like Saga and Lavinia in one game and just crushed my opponent in another game, so This duress will tell us a lot. Obviously, we have a keep on our hands here, a bit mana heavy, but that's how it is sometimes. It looks like I treat my opponents, like a fair deck. I brought in all the removal. I brought out some hard disadvantage cards and some street wraiths. Okay, let's get to it. So it's a classic situation. Do you cantrip first? Do you duress first? If you duress first, you know what you need to find on your cantrip. If you cantrip first, you know what you need to duress. I don't have a good answer. So what I end up doing here is cast Preordain first. Looks like we have a free roll probe if I want to, but I decide to keep it for Force of Will. I think that's pretty reasonable. And I see this hand. Look at this hand. Ancestral Recall, Double Force, Brainstorm Scroll, Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble is a pesky card that I don't particularly enjoy playing with or against. I think the last thing Vintage needs is more quote-unquote non-games, where only one player gets to play Magic. So that card, if I was in charge, restrict it, and I'll live with the variants, just like we live with, Ancestral Recall and stuff like that. So with that said, what do I pick out of this hand? So my opponent basically kept this hand because they wanted me to have like an all-in fast hand, and once they find a blue source, they can Ancestral Recall back into the game. So I take the Ancestral Recall here, and I trust that my opponent will not just play out the Vexing Bauble and shut off their forces. Even though it's kind of good against my hand, but it's not good in this game. So yeah, we duress away the Ancestral Recall. Opponent plays Saga. No Vexing Bauble, I believe. That would be kind of crazy. No Vexing Bauble, and I draw Demonic Tutor here. So what do you do with that Demonic Tutor, knowing your opponent has double force? Do you force the issue, or do you sandbag? It's basically, do you believe Draco will benefit me or the opponent when it comes to, fighting over what's important? And I remember I thought it was better to fire it off to also free my mana, because I most likely trade my 3 cards here for 4 of my opponent's cards, and then if I draw Doomsday, I have 3 black and I can cast it. So that's the logic. I get negated. I force back. My opponent does not force. Oh, yeah. So the theory from my opponent's side of the table is, sure, I can force now, but I would rather you take Ancestral Recall out of your deck, and then you lose that card and you can't draw it later, which is smart. And that only gets punished by me having Flusterstorm, so I can kind of slow roll here. But my opponent already saw that I don't have Fluster because I didn't fluster the Force negation. I would have just done that instead of Force of Willing. So I would say this is a very great play by my opponent, and it's definitely in the details here. So what I do, because I know my opponent's hand, the negation's gone, I just fire off Ancestral Recall right now. I could have done it on my opponent's upkeep, but I'm basically giving my opponent a chance to not Force of Will the Ancestral and get punished because I draw the nuts. My opponent does force, felt kind of, scripted in a way. That's totally fine. My opponent now has no more forces in hand, so now they can freely play out the Vexing Bauble as like their only defense. Ponder was a very good draw for me here because it lets me draw into a triple black threat, Necro or Doomsday, off the Sapphire. Vexing Bauble is very annoying, though, potentially. I do find the Doomsday, and now it's time to go big brain. So, shock myself from Watergrave, cast Doomsday. Opponent cracks Bauble in response, so what does that tell me about my opponent's last card? Could be a Force, or could be a random blue card, so they try and allow themselves to find, the pair, so to speak. They don't connect, and I get to resolve this. So let's just fast forward to... Okay. So basically, I make this pile with Demonic Tutor and Time Walk. The reason why I do that is I don't want to get, caught by draw spells, and I want to have a good pile to, naturally get to my oracles without casting Ancestral Recall, getting misstepped, getting Bowmastered, whatever. But yeah, I didn't think this through. But I also didn't see Wasteland the other games. But it turns out my opponent is a combo deck with Wasteland, which really caught me off guard because that's all I saw. I didn't see Wasteland the other game. So my opponent goes Paradoxical Outcome, draws a bunch of cards. And yeah, that's not good, right? And then I get Wastelanded, I believe. Brain Surge even. My opponent draws a million cards here. They drop to 5, put 2 back. I get wasted. I cast my Time Walk. The problem is I put Demonic Tutor here underneath because I thought my mana was safe. Demonic Tutor is a free way to like cantrip into, quote unquote, cantrip into Oracle if you have 4 mana, but I don't. So now I just have to thin my deck and pass, which is extremely dangerous. I go for Street Wraith, and I have double Oracle in the deck. So basically, the point of that Demonic Tutor was just to thin the deck. It didn't really accomplish anything, to be honest. Now I lose to some stuff. My opponent cracks Bauble. My opponent has another Wasteland. My opponent plays out Bauble. And now I can't beat a Force of Will, but I can go back-to-back Oracle. So I kind of force my opponent to have Force of Will, or Force of Will Wasteland, I guess. Yeah, this Oracle resolves, and I win the game here. So my opponent resolved a kind of a big draw spell here, kind of a big draw spell here. I got Wastelanded twice, but I was still able to get there. My opponent did not show Wasteland the first 2 games, so I kind of was a bit thrown off here, and I definitely made a bad pile with the information I had available. I remember I tried to Google my opponent, but they played a very different deck the last time, so this was kind of a new brew or whatever. So a lot of advantage gained there. My opponent made me, make a suboptimal pile. In the end, I ended up winning, but I was at a big disadvantage in the information game here. But yeah, sometimes you just get the job done, even though you don't play perfectly, and that's Magic, and that's especially true for Doomsday. That puts me at 4-0, so I'm looking very, very strong to top 8 this tournament already. All right, this is round 5. I'm playing against Mono White Initiative, and I'm down a game, so back against the wall here. I have I don't have the best hand. Ideally, you want either fast combo or interaction. As you can see, I boarded in all my spot removal. This hand has neither, but I'm still willing to, start playing Magic. My opponent reveals a Chancellor. I believe I fetch and probe. Yeah, I fetch and probe. I pay for the probe. I mean, there's a world where you can say, okay, I'll dump this probe, then I'll get selection from Preordain to look deeper for Force of Will. I don't think that's insane to do, but yeah, I decided not to. Here's Petal. Here's Archon. So yeah, spoiler, I failed to deal with this Archon. I cast a billion cantrips. I don't find a removal spell, and yeah, I just lose to this Archon. So not much to report from this round. I did my best trying to look for different stuff, develop my lands, cast Preordains, cast Ponders, cast Time Walk. But yeah, no such luck. And yeah, this card is a beating. It's a must kill. If you don't have a Force of Will, or if the opponent sneaks it through with a Cavern or Chancellor Protection, you need to find a removal spell in time, and that's where Cut Down is extremely important and a lot better than Fatal Push when it comes to dealing with Archon specifically. So yeah, that's just what happens. I'm now 4-1, and I'm looking pretty darn strong, but we have to finish the job in round 6. All right, round 6, game 3 for all the marbles. We're on the draw here, playing against Sultai Luris. And we have a decent hand. We can force, we can dig a little bit. We can maybe build towards Treasure Cruise, depending on what we find. So here, this is kind of a play that 9 out of 10 times I'm able to make, and sometimes I forget. When I play against like Orcish Bowmasters, you really want to respond to the mana source that lets your opponent cast that card and just cycle your Street Wraith, because you take so much more damage if you wait, and you don't want to get caught sleeping at the wheel. So, and it's the same with Hull Breacher. Obviously, that card is a bit, less played, but it's a good habit that I got when Hull Breacher was played a lot, and I played Hull Breacher a lot, and I could get a lot of people with it. I'm not going to worry about the Lotus here. Let's see. So green mana is most likely some oof. But yeah, Collector Oof, that's fine. And there's a Mox. There's Life from the Loam on Scalding Tarn. So Life from the Loam is not dangerous in itself. It's very dangerous with Wasteland and Strip Mine. Let's see. Okay. So drawing a land was not good. Here I play out Delta. Could be a mistake. Thinking about the Loam and Wasteland and stuff like that. But I feel like it's going to be fine. with all the land I have in hand. Okay, this is a cool one. So the ritual is bad, but I like Force of Will because I can, force pitch force, then I can maybe cast Treasure Cruise, and I want the Doomsday to combo. So very, very strong. I obviously put the force on top to have access to it on my opponent's turn. My opponent shows they play Time Twister, so I guess that confirms the Bowmasters. My opponent dredged the Loam. Okay, that's why. Here comes the Loam, and the opponent milled over a Strip Mine. So now the clock is kind of ticking. Collector Roof and Strip Mine. Great cards. Great cards. No doubt about that. So now what I have to do is go, I believe, Uncracked Fetch. Yes. So I can now go Ritual Doomsday, fight over it. Doomsday resolves. So now I have to beat a pile that's okay getting strip mined. So I think what I do here is another cool situation that comes up where, okay, I have 5 cards in deck. First draw, then I have 4 cards in deck. How do I get rid of 2 cards from my deck? Well, double fetch is the answer to that question. So now I will present a lethal oracle with Force of Will backup next turn through the strip mine. Because I do expect to get stripped on the sea, as they say. And then the opponent just let the Doomsday resolve, but to be honest, if they had like plus the Storm Force of Will, they would do that and just let me, dig my own grave here, losing half of my life total. So this is basically what it comes down to. Collector Roof getting in there, I'm down to 5. I need to fetch 2 times, that puts me to 3. But yeah, second Collector Roof is not going to do anything, so at this point I kind of know I'm golden. My opponent only has 3 cards. Draw the Oracle, double fetch, deck size 2, Oracle on the stack. I don't even need the Force. And we get there through Recursive Strip Mine and Oof. Which was... You need to win in a certain window because they can just keep going with the Strip Mine thing, and the Collector Roof makes so I can't accelerate over the Strip Mine, so to speak, with Black Lotus. But yeah, that was another kind of cool display of post-Doomsday. If you sandbag your fetches, you can thin your deck with them post-Doomsday, which is sometimes an advantage. So definitely picking your spots when it comes to when do I sacrifice fetches proactively before Doomsday and when do I sandbag them for scenarios like this. Like, that can definitely make the difference between winning and losing as well. All right, that makes sure we're ready for top 8. Let's go get him. All right. This is the quarterfinals, playing against an opponent I've never seen before in Magic Online, like in the vintage tournaments. I think it's a South American player. I mean, with the name, it's not like the most smart-ass guess in the world. But yeah, I don't have no idea what I'm up against. This hand is fine against any deck. I have a Force of Will, I have a Doomsday, I have a little bit of action, some cantrip power, a couple of lands. It's just fine. Okay, Bazaar Baghdad, that basically means that the clock is on here, and I want to, win as quickly as possible. My opponent plays a hollow one, does not have a Dredger, so what does that tell me? Definitely no Dredger in hand, that's for sure. Hollow one I'm not going to worry about, because I really want to be able to beat at least one Force of Will when I'm playing against that deck. Force of Negation, not the most exciting card to draw. Let's see if it can find some value in this game. I believe what I do here is cast Preordain, trying to spike the Black Lotus. That's like the best scenario. Preordain into Probe Oracle. So the cool thing is, what I do here is I keep both on top. The Probe is still on top. That's as Oracle is in hand. My plan is to have, if my opponent gets to a Dredger, they find like a Cabal Therapy for the graveyard. I want to force to negate that, pitching a bad card, which is Thassa's Oracle. I only need 1, right? Then if my opponent also has a Force of Will, I have Force pitching Fluster. My plan is to draw Probe, fetch Underground Sea, Demonic Tutor Black Lotus, cast Doomsday, then cast Gitaxian Probe into Gush, which then finds Black Lotus Ancestral, and I win the game. With double backup. Only 1 backup on my own turn, though. This is extremely important. This card is a bad card unless I can counter a Cabal Therapy. This card is only fodder for Force of Negation. Let's see. My opponent will most likely activate Bazaar on upkeep here to try and hit a Dredger for the draw step. And we don't know about that. We kind of have to guess, right? Also, they might have an Icarid incoming, but that's only 7 damage. We don't care too much about that because its action probe lets me win on the spot. If I get to Doomsday, right? So Bazaar's activated on upkeep. They do find a dredge, find a dredge 3. They don't do anything with Icarid, and they dredge like some irrelevant cards. So this is the key of the game where, let's say the opponent has played a ton of Vintage. Then this game goes differently. Let's see. Opponent can attack me down to 15 here. Which really isn't of any consequence, because if I fail to win next turn, I don't win this game. So here comes the Noxious Revival on Scalding Tarn. The thing is, my opponent has information via the log that I kept. Gets action probe on top. Okay? So that card must be important. Well, they don't have information about probe, but they have information that I kept the card on top. So that's why they try and use this Noxious Revival, which is usually an anti-wasteland card with Bazaar, and pitches the Force of Vigor as a Time Walk. So because they did that on their own turn, this is an instant, remember? They could have done it on my upkeep. I could force to negate that, which was the purpose of this card was to counter a therapy, which would make me, not win. And this is the same thing, right? So pretty awesome. I keep the Oracle here. It doesn't really matter which card I keep because it's gonna, be force fodder anyway. Now on my upkeep, my opponent has learned the lesson, and they go Noxious Revival on the Scalding Tarn. My opponent only has 2 cards left, but I can win if this card goes to the top, so mainly because I'll take damage from Hollow One. My opponent will then, send Icarids at me. They will have Creeping Chills in the deck. There's a lot of reasons. Also, one of my opponent's cards in hand is the Dredge 3, the Shambling Shell. So my opponent only has 1 card. It has to be a Mental Misstep or another Noxious, but I guess it's not Noxious. We already saw that. So Demonic Tutor, Black Lotus, Doomsday, Probe into Gush, Gush into Lotus Ancestral. No, not Lotus Ancestral. I guess just Lotus Oracle will do the trick. Because then I'm down to 2 cards in library. And all of a sudden we have a sweet turn 2 kill with double force. And negation only did something because my opponent decided to go Noxious on their own turn. If that's not the case, I would be down a game here going into sideboarding, and that would be quite bad. So let's go to the next game here. After sideboard, I now have Leylines. I don't have the Slow Delve spell. I don't have Consultation. I don't have Necro. But I do have all my Street Wraiths to try and win on the spot. Necro is just, you can't win on the spot. My opponent has Haste Creatures, Creeping Chills, etc. I bought out 1 Fluster, 1 Negation, 1 Cruise, 1 Demonic Consultation for the 4 Leylines. And I don't even bring in the Tabernacle. So yeah, that card got immediately cut after the tournament. Yeah, let's see. So a 7 without you would need, let's say double Street Wraith Leyline. I would probably keep, but this is not close to a keep. And mulligan into Ancestral Recall Leyline of the Void. This is obviously extremely strong. My opponent is on 5 cards here, which is not the best for them. So even though they basically need Vigor already, and just play Bazaar, pass, and then Vigor this. Otherwise, yeah, okay, they have to dig. That's always super tough for the Bazaar deck, because now they have to bin 3 cards, and they kind of have to start from scratch instead of, not starting from scratch. So I'm thinking about what to do here, and I can't remember what I do. I think I just jammed the Ancestral Recall. But, oh, okay. So I pass. My opponent at the beginning of combat goes for the Vigor. I go for Ancestral Recall in response. The reason for that is I can hit Daze or Force of Will and make this, not happen. But my opponent's absolute last card is Mental Misstep. So now my opponent gets rid of Leyline, but they're at 0 cards. And look at my hand. I mean, if you're not a Doomsday expert, this might be a cool one. So how do I win next turn? Just pause the video and see if you can get it. But yeah, I just have a clean kill next turn. My opponent dredges nothing of relevance. It only has the Dredger in hand. I Mystical for Doomsday. Dark Ritual, Doomsday. I now put Black Lotus and Ancestral on top of my deck. And I cast Ancestral Recall with 2 blue mana floating. Drawing the rest of my deck. Casting Thassa's Oracle. And I book my ticket to the semifinals. So a little bit of more experience from my opponent. And they take down game 1. Then it's up to me to win game 2. And now Dretch is on the play for game 3. And then we have a different ball game, right? So it just goes to show that the attention's in the detail. Most games, you have the chance to have influence over the outcome, but not all games, right? So that's why I kind of pride myself on, sure, I might not have won, but did I give myself the chance to win? And I want to try and maximize that, because if I did that, I couldn't do any better, and that's good, right? So that's why I'm even critical of myself when I win with this deck without playing my best, because that's what the learning is. I could just go, whoa, yeah, I won, I'm the best in the world, but how could I have won even more convincingly? How could I have prevented the last one outer instead of leaving my opponent with outs? How could I make it a 99% game into a 100% game win, right? So that's what I try and do, no matter if I win or lose. And yeah, let's see if it pays off in the semifinals. All right, we go once more against Mono White. I lost game 1, and I'm looking down the barrel of this hand. So this hand has a force. This hand has some looks with Street Wraith. I'm sure it's fine, right? So Chancellor revealed, okay. So that makes me, yeah, exactly. We want to see how many options we have here. Double Street Wraith. Not the best draws. What I can do here is develop Mox Jets and hold up Force of Will on my opponent's turn. It's reasonable, but it's obviously very annoying we didn't get to cantrip there. Opponent smells blood in the water here. Wastelanding the Underground Sea, and as you can see, that's very bad news for me here. So I brick, I have to pass. Another Wasteland, so now Underground Seas, Watergrave are bad draws. Good draws are, fetch into Basic Island, this and that. Here's Cavern of Souls and Archon, which is actually not as bad as it looks here, even though I have the Force, because I drew the cut down and I have the Mox Jet. I draw land here, so I'm back in the game. Go for a basic, I go for a Preordain. I keep one of those lands. Here's Cavern on a human. I believe Archon hits the field here. So worth noting is this is a pretty good exchange for me if I get to cut down Archon at this point. So cutting down Archon on the end step. Now I brainstorm. Basically, so why do I brainstorm here? That's a good one to dive into a little bit. I brainstorm if I don't like all of my hand, right? If I want to exchange some cards in my hand. If I just have a decent hand and I want to look for a specific thing, I might as well ponder. But brainstorming here is better because I might get some good cards. So, funnily enough, Consultation Oracle, pretty darn good combo. So now I don't need the Dark Ritual, and I believe I get rid of a land. I could even fetch and cantrip once more. Yes. So this cut down is, too good to pass down. So I draw the cut down, and I'm basically hoping my opponent goes another Archon that I can kill on the end step, and then just win with Demonic Consultation, Thassa's Oracle. So now I'm pretty excited. Let's see. Yeah, my opponent has white Archon mana in the pool. Here comes Archon. My land is dead. So this is a funny one. I now Google my opponent's last result, which is also with mono white, and in that list, there's no way to stop me here. So I believe what I do here is, I go Thassa's Oracle, that resolves. I then play my Demonic Consultation, and here comes the bad news. I get misstepped here. So my opponent's not running the same list as last time, which is what happens. That's like what happens. I think I'm supposed to go for it here anyway, and that's not much of a contest. I do have Force, so I'll try and force back on the misstep. And Mindbreak Trap ends my tournament here because this is one Oracle, and the second one just got pitched to Force of Will. So I extend the hand, GG's, and Mono White got me here. This is actually another cool one where information about the opponent's deck, if you kind of have two options, you like both of them, right? And you're going to play 2 tournaments, you can maybe switch it up and gain some small percentage points. If I knew my opponent had whatever 3 mind break traps and mental misstep, there's a chance I play differently in the game, right? But because I didn't know that, this all-in situation just ends up poorly for me, and I'm eliminated from the tournament, right? So information is huge in Magic, and if you kind of keep looking for that information to give yourself a better chance, but you also try and manipulate it a little bit to throw your opponents off, obviously without making any major stuff that will like change your deck to the worse or whatever. You can overdo it as well. Don't do that. But it's just like, yeah, it's a valuable tool. I have a few tricks when it comes to that I'm not going to share here, but I have some like that I would call free tools in order to throw your opponent off just a tiny percentage. And that's what you want to be looking for. It's stuff that hurts you way, way less than it's going to hurt the opponent. Otherwise, it's not worth it. But yeah, that did end my run here. Very nice top 4 finish. The following day, I top 8'd and had some sweet games as well. So please let me know if you want a review of that one as well. I hope you enjoyed the ride. I try to be as detailed as possible when it comes to my state of mind in different situations. I try and be very honest about where I can improve, what I should have thought about, without taking the end result into consideration. And I hope you notice that as well, that it doesn't matter for me if something worked or did not work. That does not, influence whether it was, smart or not smart. So I try and be fair when it comes to that, both on my opponent's side of the table and my own side of the table. Because I'm here to learn. I'm here to get better. I play Magic to be better at Magic the next time I play. And I'm slowly getting there. All right. I think that's going to do it for today's video. I highly appreciate you guys' interest for these top 8 runs. It's something I pride myself a lot on. Keep putting them on the board, and I will never take it for granted. Every top 8 could be the last, so I'm definitely super happy to keep racking them up. Yeah, thanks for watching my journey so far. I hope to see you next time. Bye, guys.